David Makhura, the Gauteng Premier, is expected to speak about the SIU probe.
It did not exist before COVID. So all the repurposing we are doing inside our hospitals and additional capacity we are building, where we are putting up new capacity by the end of this year, we would have added 3,422 additional beds that did not. In March this year, those beds would have not been there. Of course, the beds don't go alone. They go with the healthcare, the human resource. Again, the feedback we got this morning is that there's lots of pressure on our healthcare workers, that as we add more beds, as we bring in new technology, we have got significant new technology that will help to save life. Some of that technology, you see it in boxes here this morning. The CEO was saying to me, this is new technology that we dearly need. Professor Rudo Matiba was saying this technology will help us. We are an old hospital. It will help us even with the old wards, that they will have better technology. We shouldn't just look at the new areas. But we do want to say we are committed to building that Lilian Ngoyi District Hospital. We are committed to the upgrades of the old hospitals, but we don't want to rush to the new and abandon that which works. So Chris Hani Baragwanath is a center of excellence in Africa. It is here where the battle against COVID was fought. And lots of lives, yes, we lost 500 lives right here at Chris Hani Baragwanath, but we saved many, many, many lives, thanks to the healthcare workers. And so when we do infrastructure, it must always be in response to what your needs are, because we must be guided by you. It mustn't just be what we from head offices do. It must be guided by you. So 3,422 new beds is what we would add. We may have done it differently. We resisted the pressure to just put up many field hospitals all over Gauteng. We said we are bringing the numbers into our existing hospitals. I really don't want to take off my mask, but it is just for, I really want to I don't want to speak without my mask. So if I keep pulling it up, bear with me, because I'm also talking to the people of Tembisa. When I was saying to them, where is your mask? I must have my mask on all the time. The last issue I want to speak to is, as we do all this, as we were responding to COVID, our province did very well. There was a period where we were really doing very well. But there is something that happened that really, it put a terrible blot on the great work that we were doing. That is PPE corruption. And I know that this impacts on the morale of the health workers who have been doing great work on the ground, who have been taking tremendous risks. This impact on frontline workers who have been risking coming from level 5, who have been working right up to now. So corruption, PPE corruption, has had a negative impact on the great work that our province has done. And I must say that often when we talk about this PPE corruption, we often forget that the Gauteng healthcare workers, Gauteng institutions, the Gauteng provincial government working with other agencies and civil society put up a brave fight. But those who saw PPE and COVID-19 as opportunities to enrich themselves have done a great disservice. And that's why I always want to say, we will leave no stone unturned. Every act of corruption or collusion that took place in the midst of fighting a terrible enemy, merciless enemy, it is time that people must be put to jail. I want to emphasize everyone found to have been corrupt in the midst of a difficult fight against an invisible enemy, in the midst of great, tremendous risks taken by ordinary people, and in the midst of a battle where some lost their lives in our country. Action has to be taken. Of course, action has to be taken based on evidence, on investigations, and there must be consequences. You already know that so far there are several officials in the Gauteng Department of Health who have either been suspended, some have resigned. Others have been suspended or they've resigned because they clearly did things that are wrong. They must answer for those. Others is because they didn't take enough action. That's what the investigations would be saying, that those who with authority could have done more and they didn't. Others is because they did things that are clearly wrong. I want to emphasize that we want the money back. We want to retrieve the money. We want the money back lost to PPE corruption. And any act of corruption anywhere in the course of our response to COVID-19 and any other area of government. So where there's corruption, there must be firm action. So I have been receiving reports from the Special Investigation Unit on a weekly basis about the investigations they are conducting. Every time they give me a report, there's an identified area of action, and action has to be taken. Sometimes the decisions have to be made by the relevant executive authority. It may be an MEC or an acting MEC. If it is the Premier, I take that action. It may be a head of department who must suspend an official. But action must also be taken against the businesses, the private sector businesses that clearly colluded with government officials in this act of corruption. So we have acted on a number of. One report, as the Premier of the province, I've particularly been keen to receive, is to know whether my colleague, Dr. Bandile Masuku, the MEC for Health, was involved in any acts of collusion or acts of corruption. This is a report I've been keen to get from the special investigation. I've keenly been awaiting for this report. Last week, Friday, that is on the 2nd of October, I received the latest update from the Special Investigating Unit on the matter pertaining to the role of the Health MEC in the PPE procurement in Gauteng province. It is a matter of record that on the 30th of July, I placed the MEC on special leave and appointed an acting MEC. I today therefore report to the people of Gauteng I want the mask always on. The mask must always be on. Today I report back to the people of Gauteng on the findings of the SIU and their recommendations, and therefore the decision that I would have taken coming from that. So the SIU has found that the Health MEC, Dr. Bandile Masuku, has failed to execute his functions in compliance with the Constitution and the Public Finance Management Act. I want to repeat. The SIU has found that Health MEC Dr. Bandile Masuku has failed to execute his functions in compliance with the Constitution and the Public Finance Management Act, the PFMA. Based on this finding, they then recommended that the Premier of the province should take administrative action against the MEC for the purpose of determining the suitability to hold office as the responsible MEC for health. With regard to the substantive public interest issue of whether the MEC was involved in acts of corruption or collusion, the SIU reported to me that this investigation is ongoing. I've said to you what is it that they have found, but I was also very, very keen to say on the substantive matter of public interest of PPE corruption. The SIU has reported to me that their investigation on this part of the work is ongoing. And this investigation will hopefully be concluded and the facts be established as soon as possible. Because as the Premier of the province, I want the facts about whether the MEC was involved in acts of corruption or collusion. I want those facts because it's a matter of grave concern relating to clean governance, which is a pillar of what we have been trying to do in this province for a long time. So just based on the first thing I said, based on their finding where they say that the MEC has failed to execute his functions in compliance with the Constitution and the PFMA, I have decided as the Premier of the province to discharge Dr. Bandile Masuku from his responsibilities as the Gauteng MEC for Health. I have taken into cognizance the contribution that MEC Masuku played in improving the Department of Health since his appointment last year in May 2019, and the leadership that he provided during COVID-19 in this province is something that is undisputable. But there are issues before me as the head of the provincial government based on the SIU report that I must act on. And it is on that basis that I have decided to discharge MEC Masuku as the MEC responsible for health in our province. Taking into account that there's the part of the SIU report that is still outstanding. They've given me one part of the report, and they've said they are still completing the investigation on acts of corruption or collusion. I will not fill this vacancy for the MEC for Health until they have submitted the final report. So MEC Mamabulo will continue as the acting MEC for Health until I have received the final report of the SIU as it pertains to those issues about the acts of collusion and corruption, which they say is an investigation that is ongoing. I do want to know and get this completed before I appoint the MEC for Health in Gauteng, because I want to say, should MEC Masuku be cleared, I will gladly reappoint him as the MEC for Health. Should he be cleared, I will gladly reappoint him as the MEC for Health. But as things go at the moment, that's part of the investigation that is continuing. And I want to say that corruption is a very, very serious matter, that as a country, we have to send a strong message that Where corruption is established and it's determined, there must be consequences. At this stage, as it pertains to the part of the investigation about corruption, that part will hopefully be concluded as soon as possible. So I keenly await the final determination of the SIU pertaining to allegations of corruption and collusion, but I am acting on the part where they say he has failed. I am acting on that part already. I want to also conclude by saying I further asked the Minister of Health, Dr. Zweli Mkhize, for a reinforcement. This is critical time. The risk for a surge is always there, staring us in our faces. Due to the several suspensions and resignations in the Department of Health, because of the ongoing SIU investigation, I have asked Minister Zweli Mkhize to reinforce. This is a request I made in June. Some of you, the CEO, may remember that in June we were here, Prof. Matiba, we were here in June with Minister Mkhize to hand over the ventilators, donations from the US. In June, I had requested, in anticipation of the surge happening, and continue to say to the minister, we will ask you for reinforcement when the situation becomes difficult. Now I have activated that in writing to say, Minister, we have several officials who we have suspended because of the investigation of the SIU in the department. We don't want the department to remain with too few senior officials, so that its response to COVID-19, should the surge be in our face in a few weeks or a month or so ahead, we must have the full capacity to respond. So I am awaiting. The minister has reassured me that he will consider this reinforcement. We do have senior officials in the Department of Health. We have very capable people on the ground, especially managing our wards, very capable clinicians. We've got a lot of capable CEOs. Many of them are new CEOs, recently appointed to fill the vacancies. They are the ones who are running our healthcare system. We've got lots of workers who are maintaining our hospitals, making sure that the hospitals are clean, patients are attended to. But the head office of the Department of Health in the province has to be reinforced. And that's what I have asked Minister Zweli Mkhize to do. As we continue with the investigation into PPE corruption, because this investigation is continuing and it may take much longer. And we don't know which other officials may be found to be wrong. So, in conclusion, we will continue to work with the people of our province in communities. We must all join hands in combating COVID-19. Our leaders of our hospitals, the CEOs, many of them are here from different hospitals. We want to continue to urge you to continue focusing on the battle. The battle is to save lives, to combat the surge. The surge is something we must really, really avoid. Let's continue the battle. We must continue to provide capacity to you, additional PPE of good quality, because one of the lessons we have learned, this PPE corruption, coming from feedback is from workers themselves, is that some of the PPE was of poor quality. Poor quality PPE is not very good. It can't help us in the fight against COVID. The distribution of PPE at all times in our hospitals is something that is receiving attention from the acting MEC for Health, working with the team at the provincial level. I want to say, let us continue as Gauteng Province to fight this battle. At the same time that we are focusing on the real enemy, COVID-19, we must also battle other twin enemies. Corruption is a very key enemy in the battle to transform our country and build a better life. Gender-based violence is a very, very real enemy, particularly during COVID-19. Women have been on the. We saw the number of women, especially in July, the number of women who were getting infected with COVID-19. Those numbers were rising. At the same time that they are at the cold face of violence, gender-based violence perpetrated by men. So we need to fight these battles with the same determination, because if we want to ensure our health system responds to challenges, today is COVID-19. There may be another pandemic after COVID-19. What lessons would we have drawn? Would we have built enduring capacity, more human resources, more health infrastructure and better health infrastructure? Would we have done that? But would we have also drawn lessons that wrongdoing, when you want to do some in the course of fighting pandemics, we must be intolerant to wrongdoing, particularly corruption. There may be wrongdoing about mistakes. Human beings can commit mistakes. Someone did not do something that they were supposed to do. But we must be totally intolerant of corruption. And I know sometimes our senior healthcare workers and our senior managers, including at head office, sometimes they act feeling that if you commit a mistake, you might be lumped together with those who are corrupt. I know the senior managers in the health headquarters, people who are very well-meaning. And I'm not talking about their crooks and their those who are very well-meaning. I know they have been worried and shaken that even if they do things in the best interest and commit mistakes, they will be conflated with the corrupt. No, I want to assure you that you may commit mistakes. We are able to separate corruption from wrong judgments, arriving at a decision that was wrong, which may have had other consequences, cannot be conflated with corruption. Corruption must be dealt with where you have people who have systematically and deliberately sought to benefit themselves, their friends, and their families from the resources that are supposed to face life. That we must be intolerant of, and we must fight it with the same determination. So thank you so much. We are at Krisani Barabana today. We will be going to the next hospital. We will go to all the hospitals, especially those 10 hospitals we identified in the State of the Province address and said we need to upgrade them, we need to improve them, we need to improve and refurbish them. We also need to build new facilities. We will go to all those. So thank you so much.
All right, Gauteng Premier David Makhura there announcing that Health MEC Bandile Masuku has been fired, and this on the basis of an SIU finding that he did not observe his constitutional duties and the PFMA. So he has fired him on that basis. He says he's waiting for the second leg of the SIU investigation to find out whether indeed he was involved in actually being corrupt. And he says that if it's found that he hasn't been involved in being actively corrupt, he may well open the door for him to come back as MEC.